federal government helps people struggling to meet the cost of a healthy diet by providing the SNAP program, or what used to be known as food stamps. But the U.S. Department of Agriculture also helps in other ways, including programs for young people during the school year and even the summer. In her previous work at the USDA, our guest played a role in the legislation behind First Lady Michelle Obama's program to combat childhood obesity. She's currently the administrator for the Food and Nutrition Service. We'd like to welcome Audrey Rowe. Thank you very much for being with us, Audrey.
Thank you for having me.
This is a program that, speaking of all the food programs, there is quite a bit of expansion, but we're not just talking about the retail part of it. We're talking about what goes on for children as they go to school or even during the summer. So what's new here?
Well, what we have found, and all the statistics indicate, that food insecurity increases during the summer. Children during the school year have access to school breakfast and school lunch, but during the summer, particularly in rural communities and in some urban communities, just because of the environment in those communities, children don't have access. And so we have a concerted effort and created an initiative 2 years ago to increase the opportunity for sites throughout the community, so the children don't have to think about whether they're going to be able to get a full meal while they're home during the summer, that they know that there's a place they can go and have a good, nutritious meal.
Well, part of this is a response to families who just don't have much money. But on the other hand, we're talking about being kids. What I remember from being a kid, what I hated about getting up in the morning was I didn't have much of an appetite. And by the time I got to school, I'd start to feel hungry. I guess that's what happens with kids.
And that's what happens to kids today. And that's why this summer, the school program, Breakfast in the Classroom, works so well. Because when students during the school year get up in the morning, parents are either getting them out the door, they have to rush and get the school bus, or whatever takes place, and they arrive at school, they're hungry, they go right into their classroom, they're able to pick up a prepackaged food, breakfast foods, as well as their day's lesson. They can sit down, they can eat and work at the same time, and then by the time it's time for the Pledge of Allegiance, they finish eating, they finish their work, they get up, they do the Pledge of Allegiance, and the rest of the school day starts.
No, I remember some years back, a lot of school administrators, they did not like the idea of more eating in the schools. There are more things you got to clean up. If the students spend more time eating, then maybe they spend less time on learning. So what have we learned since then?
Well, what we've learned is it really takes organization. It takes a great deal of communication. Takes creating a feedback loop with the teachers, with custodial staff, even with the students on what they like, what they don't like in the breakfast program, with the teachers about how to administer it in their classroom so they can be assured that it doesn't get in the way of instructions. That's why this whole notion of them working on some school instruction while they're having lunch, having breakfast, is very important, and then they get into the regular lessons for the day. With the janitorial staff, making sure they understand what needs to be in the hallways, training the students to, when they finish, put all their material back in their sacks and put it out into the trash. So it's organization, feedback, even something as simple as knowing what students have what allergies in a particular classroom. So when you deliver the food, there's a child who may have an allergy, his or her meal is very different in the package than the other student. So working through and thinking through all of those challenges and planning, but also importantly looking at what it's costing. You need to know what is happening, what children are eating, what they're not eating, make adjustments, be flexible. And I'm finding that the programs that do work, they put that all together. They have a business environment, they have a school environment, and they have the state environment, which is engaged in helping them to plan through and to have a successful program.
Now, in Boston, programs like this, we usually have them at schools where a very high percentage of the students qualify for at least some amount of assistance with food. But talk about how this helps the families meet that gap in their nutrition needs, because a lot of these families don't have cars, they can't drive to supermarkets, and even if they could, maybe the price of a healthy diet, it's not cheap.
Well, families are struggling. They're trying to make sure that they can get food on the table, at least one meal a day on the table. And so having a way to be confident that your child is getting a meal certainly reduces the stress on many families. It also increases the resources, leverages their resources in a different way, and so increases their buying power. But most importantly for the students, what we're finding is when they have a breakfast in the schools, there are fewer trips to the school nurse with stomach problems. Their discipline, they have seen decrease significantly, but most importantly, they can pay attention. They're not falling asleep by 10 o'clock in the morning because they're lethargic, they're tired, they're hungry. So that is a benefit to the students, but also to the families. They're able to expand their resources and have greater opportunity to make sure that they can meet all of their children's needs when they're not in school.
When you do a program like this, right, what's the climate like in the school around this?
I saw a school today, the climate, and other schools. I travel all around the country, so I see in many schools, the school cafeterias or the school classroom, it's quiet. Children are eating. Children are hungry when they arrive. I was in California a few weeks ago, and it was the Tuesday after a 3-day holiday. The children lined up at least 10 or 15 minutes before the cafeteria opened. There was additional food made available on that morning. And what I found was that the children not only were taking the additional food, they were eating everything on their plate. And when I talked to them about how they felt about the program, one little girl said to me, "I was really hungry when I got here, but I am so happy now." So it does create an environment in the schools where the students are not feeling anxious, where they're calm, and the volume, the noise volume is even lower because they're eating. And they are engaged in very low conversations, well organized. I've just been very, very pleased to see, particularly in those schools that are community eligibility schools, where all of the children who are in that school can participate in the breakfast program. So you're seeing children, an increase in participation among children, and an increased sharing among children, because all children don't want everything that's on their plate and on their tray, so they're able to put it on a sharing table. And so another child can go, if he or she wants a second apple or a second container of milk, they can share. So there's also some other learning taking place, which is just wonderful for young kids, particularly in the elementary and middle schools. Now, it's more challenging at the high school level. But elementary and middle schools, we seem to have designed a program that works for most schools.
You helped the First Lady put together her program to combat obesity. How would you say that's worked out so far?
I think when we look at the implementation of the Healthy Hunger-Free Kids Act, we're finding that over 92% of the schools are actively participating. The school meals are they are preparing them, and they're finding ways to get through the early challenges. Yes, there were some early challenges. The marketplace wasn't ready. Industry wasn't ready. Students' palates were changing. They were confronting foods that they had never seen before. But through education and time and working with both industry and the schools, we're finding a significant increase in acceptance by the students and a significant decrease in the amount of food waste. I mean, there have been a couple of studies that have been recently issued that show that food waste is going down, increased consumption of fruits and vegetables by students. Not all students, but those students who do take fruits and vegetables, they're eating more fruits and vegetables than they did before this program was implemented. So I see some challenges still before us. There's sodium. How do we make sure that the sodium requirements that the Institute of Medicine said are appropriate for children of certain ages, and the science tells us? How do we implement those if the industry does not have the product available? Because students do have developed their taste buds, and they know what they like. And so you really do have to figure out how to use other spices to make food tasteful for the students. One thing that I'm always amazed at is the more spice you put in it, the hotter the food is, the more the elementary school students like it. So it's really making sure that you understand and involve your students in experiencing the food and helping you to decide which product to put in a school cafeteria and which one not to.
Probably we should mention that if people want to check out any information about food, nutrition, or health, you've got something they can Google at least?
I think what they should do is Google USDA Food Nutrition Services, and they can find all 15 nutrition assistance programs that we offer.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
From the USDA, Audrey Rowe. We'll have more news in just a moment.